Hey, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and this is week 5 of the Dear Jane Quilt along that I'm doing this year. And if you've been following me, you know that I'm using EQ8 with the Dear Jane add-on, but you don't need to use it. There is a book, and it sounds like from some of the comments I've gotten that there was another program that had Dear Jane that you could print from. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like a few people had those. There's acrylic templates, there's paper pieces, so there's all kinds of ways to do this quilt without EQ8, but you can follow along with me and see how I do it and maybe learn how to put your pieces together. The other thing I want to say is if you don't want to watch the EQ8 information that I do at the beginning of each video, in the description down below are time codes to all the construction of the blocks. So you can skip ahead to those and you don't have to watch the EQ8 stuff. But anyway, let's get started in EQ8. There's not much I'm going to be talking about today. I have in front of me the block M1 Dogwood Days. And EQ8 gives you some variations on some of these blocks. I showed you that in earlier videos that you can go to the Dear Jane add-on, and we've got center blocks and we have center block variations. I have used some of the variations before, and I am going to use it with this M1 Dog Days. And the reason I'm doing that is because, let me get back to the block here, because the center portion, and I'm circling it right now with my mouse, in the center blocks is this white color background, if that's what you want to call it. In the actual Dear Jane quilt, Jane Stickle's quilt, this block in the middle is a different color. So I chose the variation because that's the block with the different color, and the construction isn't different, it's just a different color. So I am using the M1 variation for my quilt today. And I am going to foundation paper piece this, and I have printed it out, and you can see we have a bunch of strips that are just by themselves, so we'll probably just cut fabric with those. All right, so let's go look at another one of these blocks. This one here, F6 Deanie's Daisies, is going to have, the one I've chosen is going to have applique in the middle of it. So this isn't going to be too hard. You got some diamonds and a square in the corners, and then you'll have this applique in the middle. So you'll need, if you want a foundation paper print it, you'll have to choose foundation, which I did. And I've got my pieces for that, which look like this. But then you'll have to go and print templates so that you can get the template for the flower in the middle. And I deleted all the other templates in this because we just need a flower petal, and we're going to cut 4 of these out. So that's what I'm doing with F6 Deanie's Daisies. The other ones, L8 Kite box Kite, sorry, is a pretty straightforward foundation paper piece. TR5 Michigan Dunes is a pretty forward foundation paper piece also. There's going to be, let's pull up this one. This is H11 Piercing Rays, and I am going to paper piece this, and I think, just in my estimation, I think this may be one of the more difficult blocks we have this week. Maybe not in the first 5 weeks we have, but we're going to have some Y seams right in here. Right in there, if you can see where I'm circling, in all 4 sides of this. So I printed the paper piece. The center's fairly straightforward. I only kept one of the sides and the triangles because they're all the same size, and I will need to cut templates for that. and we're going to have to fit those in somehow. So that's going to be interesting to figure out how I'm going to do this. I've kind of given it some thought, but it always, you know, it may change when I'm actually in the construction phase. So this is going to be paper pieced, and it's going to be interesting. So there you go. Those are all the blocks that I'm doing this week. You can see where they fit into my populated chart. This is just the colors of the blocks. I have two charts. I populate one with the colors of my blocks, and then I also populate one with the pictures. I just added that to my sketchbook, and here's my pictures chart populated. So I don't have these new blocks in here yet. So I want to show you something because a couple people asked me, how do you save these charts? So I just added that one that I did, which has the first 5 weeks into it. It's right here. You can see, especially at the top, you can see the 5 top row blocks here, the triangle blocks. And then down here is the other color chart. It says quilt populated with colors, has 4. So I can delete the one with 4. I'm going to hit delete. Now I have just the quilt with the 5 in it now. So you're not having a ton of different quilts in here. Just add your blocks, add it to the sketchbook, and then delete the last one you did, and then you'll always have an updated version of this quilt population if you're doing it with, like I am. And I do the exact same thing when I add to my pictures quilt chart. I'll add my week 5 in here, and then I will add it to the sketchbook, and then I'll delete the previous quilt chart and have just this one with week 5 in it. So I had a couple questions about that. I just wanted to go through it real quick, how I do it. And that's how I do it. So there you go. There's my little EQ8 tips for this week and the blocks we're doing and how I'm doing them. So hit the subscribe button, notification bell if you want to stick with me on this quilt along. And we've got some other fun stuff we're doing on the channel. But anyway, let's get to making these blocks. All right, let's just go ahead and start with what I think might be the hardest one first. I am going to put a picture of the block up in the corner as I'm doing this so you can see where I'm headed with this block if you can't remember, because the foundation paper pieces don't show you what the block's going to look like in the end. And remember, there's 4 of these, and there's 4 of the triangles, and there's 4 of these pieces that go on the edge that I've cut. So what I've done is these 2 pieces, the orange and the white, are going to be in the center here and what looks like orange slices. And then these 2, which I have 4 of each of all of these. This is going to be all the triangles, and this is going to be all these side pieces. So I'm going to start with the easy part, which is going to be putting our center together. So let me get prepared. All right, here's the back of my 2 center pieces. I've gone ahead and drawn the lines and shown where we need coverage. This is my A piece, and this is the first piece. I put a number 1, 2, 3, 4 is the order we're going to go. Then I put an O for orange, white, orange, white, so I know what colors I need as I'm putting them down. I've taken a white square and an orange square, and I put them together. These are going to be our first 2 pieces. Orange is our first piece, so that's going to be on the bottom. These will be right sides together. And I'm going to lay it in there so that we're about 1/4 of an inch over our sewing line. Right here. That's our sewing line. And I have coverage on all my other lines out here that I need. So we just need to turn it over, sew on the line, and I like to lock stitch at these seam intersections. All right, there's my 2 pieces. You can see once it's ironed over, I have coverage on all the lines I need to have lines on. Let's turn this back over. We want to go on the line between A2 and A3 now, fold it back, and we need to trim 1/4 of an inch with our add 1/4 ruler. There's our first two pieces. I'm going to grab an orange because that's the next piece. And just line it up so we make sure we have coverage right there. All right, you can see that all the lines I need covered are covered. Go between A3 and A4. Trim it up. Add our last white piece. Sew on the line, and we'll be done with our first half of our center. There we go. That's what it looks like sewn together. I will trim this when I get this one done. So I'm going to finish this one, and I'm going to get both pieces trimmed up, and we'll put them together. All right, there's my two center pieces, and I've trimmed them up. I even trimmed the notches here, so it lines up perfectly when you put them together. So I'm going to pin these, and I am going to sew right along this solid line and put a lock stitch in at this corner and this corner. All right, there's my center piece, and I ironed it open. Now, if you look at the block, we have our triangles that go up into the corners, and then we have these pieces that go on the edges. So at this point, I don't need these templates anymore. You need to decide where you want to do your Y seams. Do you want to attach this and then do your Y seam here? Or do you want to attach this and do your Y seam here? I personally want to put these triangles on first and then do the bigger pieces as my Y seams. So our triangles are going to go against our orange center, and then these are going to go in between. Like that. So these are the Y seams right here that I'm choosing to put together. So let's put on our triangles first, because that's going to be easier. And it's probably hard to see, but if you cut it out per the foundation template that got printed out, there are some notches right here on the ends. So I'm just going to line up this first notch here, right here, with the edge of my orange. I am going to sew this on, and I think I will iron it towards the triangle. I hope that's not a mistake, but that's what I'm going to do. All right, there is my center with the triangles, and I need to now add these in. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one, and then I'll come back and tell you how I did it. So I'll be back, let you know how it goes. All right, I had to do 3 of these to figure it out. I'm still square. I need to be 5 inches square, so I really think that it's going to work. I was really worried it wasn't. What I've done is I poked some holes into these points right here, and I've been marking them on my templates that I cut out. Just go through that hole and make a mark. If you can't see it, you can come back and make another mark. And then what I do is since I'm using batiks, I can mark on either side. You would want to mark on the back side. I'm going to put a pin right through that mark. And then I want to put it through the intersection. I'll show you when I get there. Okay, the pin you want to come through right here at this intersection of all these points. And just straighten that pin up. So, there we go. we have this 1/4 inch mark on the other 1/4 inch mark. I'm going to just turn this. And I'm going to keep my pin straight and line it up on the edge, and I'm going to clip my edge so it stays in place. I'm going to take my pin out. Let us move. Forgot. The other thing I was doing was clipping into the seam at 3 different areas. Not to the seam, just 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch at the corner, and then just right on the other side. Just 3 little clips so that when I turn, it'll help me. All right. I think what I'll do is take you over to my machine and kind of show you how I'm doing this. All right, over here at my machine, I'm going to start sewing up here. And I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch right to this point right here. Okay, once I hit that point, I am going to stop. I want to rotate my fabric around, and I kind of want to pull this out of the way. So now I have a straight line from the point I just stopped at to my point, my other mark point right there. All right, I've sewn to my other point. I'm going to stop. I'm going to pull my fabric around again, and you got to kind of work back here where my left hand is to pull, kind of pull what you've sewn over so you can create another straight line from your point to the end of the block. And that's how I'm doing my Y seams. All right, there it is. As you can see, it is 5 by 5, which is what I need. Is it perfect? No. This one's not, especially, and that was the first one I did. So I did get better as I went along. I hope I showed you how I did it, so maybe it helps you put it together also. I honestly thought about just stopping and applicating this, but I was like, no, I'm gone this far. I can do these Y seams. And it did turn out square, which is what I need. So there you go. That is the H11 piercing rays block. Hopefully that's the hardest one we have to do today. All right, let's move on to M1 Dog Days. I'm not anticipating this being a difficult block. I've gone through and I've figured out what kind of sizes I need, especially for these. These are easy. So I've got my peach pieces here for the long ones. And then I've got these 2 rectangles are for inside here, and then the squares are for inside these pieces. I'll throw up a picture of the block so you can see what we're going to be ending with. What I am going to do is I'm just going to put together a corner and a center, and that won't take very long. And then we're going to figure out how to do all these outer strips. So I don't know that I'm going to use these templates, but I don't know yet. I'm going to figure it out when I get there. So I'm going to do one of each of these and start building from there. All right, there is my 2 pieces. I've got coverage everywhere. You don't see any lines. So we need to trim it up. So let's turn it over on this side. Go between F2 and F3. Fold it back. Oh gosh, I've got some there. I guess I didn't leave quite 1/4 of an inch, but I left enough. So I got enough. I need the longer of the 2 rectangles I cut. Let's just put it across there. I've got coverage here and I've got coverage there. And we're going to sew along that line. All right, don't see any lines, so we're doing good. So that's how you do a corner. This one's pretty easy. The edges of the paper are, we want coverage there and we want coverage in here. So we need A1 is an orange, which is these squares, and we need a white square. So I'm going to put them together, and A1 is orange, so that's going to go down first. I want to make sure I have coverage to the edge of the paper and 1/4 of an inch over that line and the edge of the paper here. So looks good. Let's get it sewn. All right, there's my 2 pieces. Coverage. We just have to add our 3rd orange piece, so let's fold it. And I have enough to cut. Not a lot. Grab another orange piece and sew along the line. All right, that's what the straight pieces look like. So these are the main pieces in this block. I'm going to get all my other pieces sewn together, and then we'll start putting the block together. All right, I have all my pieces sewn and trimmed up. I have them laid out, so I have section A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So the first thing we need to do is put these 3 pieces together. And it looks like the way EQ8 had us sew these, that these will nest. These seams will nest together. Yep, they do. They nest together. So nest those seams up. Sew on the line. And I'm going to iron these open. So I'll get these 3 sewn together. All right, there's my center 9 patch. So now we want to take our ends. And they've got these notches on them that I cut. So we should be able to line those notches up with the ends of our 9 patch. And we can. So you can see this notch and this notch land right on the edge. So that's what I'm going to do. Line those up on the edge, sew on the line, and I will probably iron these open too. All right, here's my centerpiece finished. So these pieces represent all of these. They're not cut the correct length, which is fine. You can do that if you want. You can measure from dotted line to dotted line and cut it, and then cut the correct width. So I've cut the correct width, which is 1 inch. And what I'm going to do is just start sewing these on and trimming them to the block. So I want to grab a white, because the next, we've got a pink border, the next border is white, and then we go pink. So I am going to overlap this. I'm going to sew it on. I'm going to iron towards the white, and then I'm going to trim according to my block. All right, here's my piece, my center piece with my strip sewn on, and now I'm just going to line it up and trim off the sides. Now we can take 2 of these pieces and put them on each side like that, and then this piece will go on the bottom. So I'm going to do the exact same thing I did here with these 2 pieces. Sew them on, iron towards the strip, trim them, and then the same with this one once these 2 are on. All right. You see me doing this in real time, people. I'm figuring this out as I go also. So now we've got to put our borders on the outside. And I've got a seam that comes across here and here. So I think what I'll do here is put these 2 sides on opposite and then add these 2 sides at the end so that I'm crossing these seams. Just my feelings. I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to sew it on, iron towards the strip, and use the block edges to trim. All right, there we go. There is our M1 block. What's it called? Dogwood Days. And that's how I put it together. You could use the paper pieces. I don't have much luck using just singular paper pieces, so I use them as templates, or I measure them and cut them out like you would rotary cutter instructions. But anyway, There is that one. All right, let's get started on L8 Box Kite. This one should not be too hard to put together. I feel like we've done something pretty similar in the last few weeks. So I don't have very many pieces here. I've got my white corners over here. I've got my white triangles for the center. And then these smaller rectangles are these two. This larger rectangle is here. And then these 4 pieces are out here in the edge. So I think this is pretty self-explanatory if you've been doing any kind of paper piecing. So I'm not going to do these here. I think what I'll do is this one, because this one is going to be like that one. This is the hardest piece in this. So we'll get started on this piece right here. All right, here's our piece that I'm going to do. I've gone to the back so you can see I've outlined the entire piece. I've drawn the lines in that we're going to need to sew on. And I've written in here, this is our number 1 piece. It's going to be orange. 2 is going to be white. 3 white, 4 orange, 5 orange. So I don't get it wrong because I have done that. So we need the shorter rectangles for our white orange, and this is 2. So let's go here. Let's make sure we've got a 1/4 inch of coverage right here because that's where we're going to be sewing. And we need to have coverage in these lines right here, and we have plenty of material to do that. Then I'm going to take one of my triangles, and it needs to be oriented this way. It's plenty big, and I'm just going to line it up here. The way we're going to be flipping it, since we're going to be flipping it this way, I want to make sure I have at least 1/4 inch coverage here, and I have plenty, and I obviously have plenty over here. So we'll go over to our machine, and you're just going to sew from here to here, lock stitch at both those points. All right, there's my first 2 pieces. You can't see any of the lines I need coverage on. Let's flip it over. We need to trim for our 3rd piece. So we're going to go between A1 and A3. Trim it up. I need to grab my other triangle, one of my other triangles, and it needs to be oriented like this. And since it's going to be flipping that way, we want to make sure we have 1/4 inch coverage at least right here. And I've made my triangles plenty big to make sure I have coverage. Because the difference between this triangle and this one is we have this 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it makes it a much bigger area we need to cover. So on the line, I lock stitch at my intersections. All right, here's my 2nd triangle put on, and you can see we have plenty of coverage where we need it. So I'm going to turn this over. We need to do our A4 piece, so let's go on that line. Let's trim there. And I need this one long piece. That's what I made it for, was for this one piece right here. So we want to line it up. So our longest sections are right here where these points are, where I've drawn it, and we've got coverage there with my piece. You can make it a little longer if it makes you feel better, but as we're flipping it, we're coming in so that we should have coverage in the end. All right, let me get it sewn up, see how it did. All right, here's my A4 piece. You can see we can't see any of the lines I drew, so I had plenty of material to cover that. Last piece we have to put on is our A5. That's going to be another orange. Get it trimmed up, and that's what these pieces are that I cut. So I'm lining this up so that I have plenty of coverage here on the ends where my seam allowance is. All right, so I'm going to sew on the line all the way across through the seam allowance and lock stitch at my intersections there. All right, there's our big piece here. So this piece will be identical to these we did in here. These are just pretty much put together in order. Just make sure you have all your seam allowances covered. So I'm going to finish this block out and then we'll start constructing it. All right, I finished my pieces. I have trimmed them up and this is how they are going to be laid out. This is my piece that's equivalent to that one. So first thing we want to do is put these two pieces together. And you can see there are notches that I cut here, so they should line up on either end of this piece, and they do. So you can see that the notch lines up with each of these edges. So we're going to sew on our solid line here, and I'm going to lock stitch at these corners here, and I am going to iron this open. All right, at this point, you could cut out this piece exactly as this template. I am just going to add it on, and I'm going to trim towards with these edges of the centerpiece. I am going to iron towards my orange piece. All right, here's my center piece done. Now we just need to add our ends. I have oriented each side so that my seams nest right here. So I'm just going to put it together, nest my seams, pin it, and the seam doesn't nest, but that's okay. And I'm going to sew along this line right here. I'm not going to sew into this. I will trim this later once we get this piece on. All right, I went ahead and put both sides on. And I am going to iron these open, but they fit perfectly. So I think what I'm going to do is just trim this right now. Just line it up on the bottom, trim it off. And we are set to go. Let's see what it looks like. There we go. There's our L8 box kite. That was fun to put together. Not too hard at all. All right. Maybe we're going from hardest to easiest? We'll see, I don't know. All right, I saved the applique block for last. It's not going to be very hard. I have, this is our applique shape that I'm going to use in the middle of our block here for the flower petals. I've drawn them out on my Steam-A-Seam 2 Light, and I drew them out by the solid line, not the dotted line. So I have these 4 ready to go onto some white fabric. Here are our foundation paper pieces. Pretty straightforward. We got 4 of these diamonds in a square, so I'll do 1 of these. And then this center piece is just like we did in the last one. It's just 1, 2, 3 put together. So my triangles are in all of the corners here. This 1 square is for the center of here. These large squares are for right here, these 4 white squares, and then the smaller ones are in the middle. So that's it to this block. So I think I will put together, actually I'll put together 1 of these, and then the rest of the block is going to be exactly the same. And then we'll come back at the end after we've got our block all put together and we'll put our applique on. All right, here's the piece I'm going to put together. I flipped it over, I drew it out so you can see where I'm working. I outlined the outside roughly so we know where to have coverage. Here's our diamond in a square. We're going to start in the middle with 1 and then just go around the outside of it. And then we'll add our square here at the end. So the smaller square is what I'm using here. And I want to go 1 to 2. So let's just make sure I got 1/4 of an inch coverage around the whole square, which I do. I made it plenty big. I'm going to grab one of my triangles and we want it to sit like that. So let's just kind of center it over. I made these plenty big too, so we don't have a lot of coverage there that we need to make. So I am going to lock stitch here and sew lock stitch at that point and sew outside the seam line. All right, there's my first piece put on. So let's go to our third, which is right here. Let's pull it back. Let's trim it up. And we'll add our next triangle. And again, I'm just going to do the same thing. Just kind of line it up. I like to line up the points here too. Since this is going to have this seam allowance we meet out here, it's going to need to be a little bigger, and we have plenty to work with. So the rest of the 3 of these corners are going to be exactly the same as this one. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to sew and do lock stitches at these seam intersections. All right, I went ahead and put all 4 of my corners on, and I have plenty of coverage. Now we just need to add the final square in this piece so we can get it trimmed up. Take one of our larger squares, which is what we're using this for. Make sure we've got coverage on our edges, and we do. So we can sew this up and iron it towards the white, which is what you do in paper piecing. And we'll be done with this piece. This section. All right, here's my first piece put together, plenty of coverage. I'm going to finish all of these pieces. We'll come back, we'll put them together, finish the block, and then we'll put our applique pieces on in the center. All right, there's all my pieces. I've laid them out. So we need to put these 2 sides together. So I'm going to put these together here, and I'm going to iron towards the corner so that it nests with this seam right here. Okay, now we can put our sides onto our middle here, and all our seams are going to nest. And I think what I will do is iron my seams open. Yeah, I'll see how that goes. All right, there's my block ready to get the applique, and I've cut my little pieces out, and we need to get the paper off the back of them. These are little. Jane Stickle liked some little blocks. All right. We want this to just go from corner to center. So I'm just going to put my first one in and see how I do and adjust it from there. All right, there we go. All I have to do is fuse that down and our block is done. F6 Deanie's Daisies. All right, now we get to move on to our last block, which is one of the triangular blocks that go on the border. All right, let's get started on our last block for this week called TR5 Michigan Dunes. I'll throw a picture up so you can see what it's going to look like when we get done. That is one thing that EQ8 doesn't print out, what the block looks like with their foundation paper pieces. Another thing I kind of would like to do, because I have to sit with it on my computer so I can remember exactly what it looks like. Even though you could probably put the sections together, I still like to have a visual of what it looks like. Anyway, we have these sections are similar. We've done one of these in the past. This one's sort of similar to these. And then we've got these 2 end pieces here. So what I have is I have a small peach color for this little piece. These 2 strips are going to go here. I have all of these, I think there's 10 of them, rectangles to go in all of these triangular shapes here for the peach colors. And then the exact same thing for the white in these pieces. And then 2 long strips here. So I think what I'll do is put this piece together. It's going to be very similar to this one. We did one of these in the past. I can do it real quick. Let's do these 2 pieces. And then we'll put the whole block together at the end. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. All right, here's the 2 pieces I'm going to demonstrate. I'll start with the tiny one. We have E1 here, E2, then E3. I drew it all out on the back with 1 O as 1 orange or peach or whatever color we're using here. You want to call it, I'd call it peach, I guess. 2 is right here, so I'm going to put my square about 1/4 of an inch over the line.
That's good.
And these are my strips that I need for this piece. And we need coverage. You can see it right here, all the way up to this point and down. So I am going to lay my piece like this, so I have more of it over here. And then when it gets flipped up, it'll cover that corner. So we are going to sew on this line, lock stitch here and there. These are my first 2 pieces. Oops, we gotta move these off my cutting board. And we need to come over here to E3, fold it over and trim. I'm going to take my other short rectangle and I'm going to add it here. And you can see that it goes right off the paper on both sides, so we have plenty of coverage. So I'm going to sew along this line, lock stitch at that intersection and that intersection. There's our first little top section done. So I'm going to set that aside. Let's get started on this one. So we start here with C1 and we work our all way up to C7, and then we'll add C8 on in the end. So I've already drawn on the back what I need. Here's all the pieces I need. So I'm going to take my peach. I put an O for orange. It's peach. And I want to put it 1/4 of an inch over the line between 1 and 2 right here. So I'm just going to take the same white piece and I'm just going to kind of overlap it a little. I'm going to bring it up. So it's just overlapping this, and we have plenty of overlap here so that when we flip it, we will get coverage right here. So we need coverage here. All right, let's sew on that line. That would be right here. Lock stitch that intersection and this intersection. Okay, there's my first 2 pieces. Let's turn it over. And we need to do the piece between C2 and C3. We need to trim at that point. Let's take our peach color, since we're alternating colors. And I want to make sure I have enough coverage here on each side of this line. I do. And we're going to be flipping it up, so we want to kind of center the piece with the point. And if I fold it up, you can see we have plenty of coverage. All right. So from here, lock stitch and lock stitch there at that intersection and sew off the paper. All right, there's my 3rd piece. Let's turn it over. Let's go between C3 and C4. Fold it. Let's trim it. And grab a white piece. And again, I want to, like I did the other white piece, we don't need much coverage here. And we have it. We need more coverage up here. So I just kind of gave myself about 1/4 of an inch past that piece right there. And then sew on this line, lock stitch there and there. There we go. That's how you put these pieces on. I'm gonna continue stair-stepping my way up, and then I'll come back when we're ready to put C8 on. Okay, there's my stair steps put on. Now we need to come over here and trim it so that we can add our long white piece. I might have too small of a cutting board. Nope, just about. All right, so this is where these long white pieces come in. I am going to lay it out. I made it plenty big. You can see that we have plenty of coverage on each side, and we're gonna sew on this long seam and lock stitch at the intersection. All right, there's my finished piece. I'm gonna put it with my other piece. These two are pretty much exactly the same as this. I'm gonna get these two finished and then we'll start assembling this triangular block. All right, here's my pieces trimmed up, and I've got A, B, and C section. This is my D. This is what this piece was, or will be. And then the top here is E. Yep, that's E. So we need to start kind of building this way. So we need to put these two sections together, and what you could do is put a pin through this corner. Come on, pin. There we go. And then we can find the other one. And there we go. So keep your pin straight. That helps us line that up. We will have tails on both ends. And I'm going to clip it, and I'm going to sew along this line, and I'm going to iron this seam. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to iron towards B. All right, here's the first two sewn together. And the reason I ironed towards B was so there's no tail here. All right, we'll do the same thing with this one. Let's find the point. And that point, line it up with our pin straight down, and we can. Not much but tail on this one, on either side. So let's pin this up and we will sew this down. And again, I'm going to iron towards the C section. All right, here's our A, B, and C put together. Now, here is my D. This is 1 inch wide from seam allowance to seam allowance. I've cut it longer than I need. And I am going to just kind of center this on here. Sew it on. I have plenty on both sides. And then when I'm going to iron towards the D, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to use the block to cut my straight edges. All right, here's my D piece sewn on. I've ironed towards the D piece. I'm going to use the straight edge of my block to cut this. There's that. There we go. All right, now we can take our top piece, and there are tiny little notches. I don't know if you can see them right here. These notches, let me put some, the edge of this notch and this notch are going to line up with the edge of our bottom section here. So there we go. I am going to sew on the solid line with lock stitches at the corners. There you go. That is TR5 Michigan Dunes. Let me know what you think about how I constructed it. Are you going to construct it the same way? Whew, okay. Those are the 5 blocks for this week. All right, we finished our blocks, and yeah, look at my glasses. I have blue blocker lenses, so that's why there's blue in my glasses. We finished our blocks, and I just want to show you real quick, adding them to the photo chart that we have here in EQ8, because I've had a few people ask me how I save it. So I just want to show you real quick. I did my photos. Here's my photo chart, And I do have a video on this, on how I do it, so I'll link that down below. But I've added the photos of my latest blocks over here. I'm in Photo Tools, and this is TR5, so I'm going to add these blocks in. And this one is F6. This one is L8. This one is M1. And this one is H11.
Good.
So I've now added all the blocks that I did this week. So what I want to do is just add this to my sketchbook. So let's take a look at the sketchbook. Quilts. So you can see I have two photo ones right here. This one has 4 at the top. This one has 5 at the top. So this is week 5 here on the right, the one that has the blue around it. So I'm going to go over here to 4 and I'm going to delete it. So that leaves me with the latest version, and I can now sort these if I want. So I want my photo first, and then I want my color, and then the blank. So I just wanted to show you how I do the photo population. I had a few people ask me how I save them. And so you don't have a bunch of, you don't save every single week. That's how you do it. You just save a new one and then you delete the last one there. So anyway, that was fun. Got all my blocks here, like I showed you last time. I really like how they turned out. This one was difficult. I don't know if I helped you or not, but let me know how I did with the Y seams. And if you want to stick around, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and you can do this with us, or you can watch till the end. And I've got lots of other fun stuff going on the channel. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.